A quick mention that there are going to be some questions that we just cannot answer today due to, the situation at hand. But I will introduce our speakers. We're going to have legal counsel Michael Seed say a few words, and he'll touch on that. We have Annette Custer here, who was the lady in the video. We will then have PAGC Vice Chief Chris Jobe speak. Then we'll have Vice Chief Heather Bear speak on behalf of the Saskatchewan First Nations Women's Commission. And then we'll finish with Vice Chief Pratt on behalf of the FSIN executive. So with that said, we will begin. Michael, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arissa, for the warm introduction. As you said, my name is Michael Seed. I'm legal counsel with FSIN, and it is an immense privilege to stand here with Annette and talk about her story. Truly, she's an incredibly brave woman. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to face the cameras, come forward, and talk about a story like this. So I want to thank her and her partner for being here. Annette is also a devoted mother. She's a loving partner. She's a Cree woman from the Peter Ballantine Cree Nation and a current resident of Saskatoon. Most importantly, Annette is a human being. And I really hate that I have to say that, but sometimes in these situations, it's necessary. Annette is a human being. She's entitled to her dignity, and she's entitled to fair treatment. No less than myself, no less than the chief sitting behind me, no less than any of you. At minimum, she is entitled to her dignity and fair treatment. Last week, Annette had her dignity stripped from her in the parking lot of a Freshco grocery store. A video of a portion of the events was captured and shared on social media. If you haven't watched the video, I'd really urge you to watch it. No matter how disturbing you might find it, no matter how difficult it is to make it through, I urge you to watch it. Because what it shows is Annette face down, her chest grinding on pavement, her knuckles digging in pavement. Her arms are contorted, at one point twisted around her back. She's struggling to push herself up, and she's begging for help while a white male puts his weight on top of her, leveraging her into the pavement with his legs. He's a stranger to Annette. He's in plain clothes. She's audibly struggling to understand what is going on, what is happening. Why is she down on the ground? And naturally, she's trying to get up. And she pleads for him to stop. When she manages to get to her feet and try to get out of the situation, she's chased, she's dragged and pulled by her limbs aggressively until she makes her way to her vehicle and gets in the driver's side. But it doesn't stop there. The man continues to hold on to her. He puts the full weight of his body on top of her. Inside a tiny vehicle driver's seat. And he continues to hold on to her while she's begging for help, while bystanders beg him to let her go. She has no room. She's visibly afraid. She's audibly hyperventilating and still struggling just to move. If you watch the video, maybe you'll get a slight sense of the sort of claustrophobia that would create. I felt it watching the video. Now imagine being under the weight of that stranger in your vehicle, pleading for help. And yet he refuses to get off of her. When this confinement and assault ends, Annette is left physically and psychologically injured. And I know that it's incredibly difficult for me to talk about this with Annette. I know it's incredibly difficult for her to hear it again. And again, I want to say it's a testament to her bravery to do so and bring this to light. This video is difficult to watch because it shows an Indigenous woman being treated unfairly, violently, inhumanely. She suffered unreasonable and excessive force applied by someone who purported to have the authority to apply it. But nothing justifies this level of force, this type of force, this type of violence. Frankly, it's disgusting. It was the kind of assault that someone saw and felt the need to record. It's the kind of incident that caused numerous people who saw it to try and intervene on Annette's behalf, to try to get this man off of her. Thankfully, it was recorded. Thankfully, because too often than not, this type of treatment of Indigenous people, especially Indigenous women, goes unnoticed. It gets relegated to the shadows and it is forgotten. And no one is held accountable for the pain that it causes. Annette's experience is not unique. We know this. We know it from the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry. Its records and its findings. We know that the abuse of authority by the people that have it happens. It happens in our city, it happens in our communities, it happens in every single province in this country and every territory, probably every day. And we know, again, too often than not, these incidents, whether they're motivated by racial discrimination, sexism, or hate, are tragic events that go unnoticed. We need to start holding people and organizations accountable for the conduct and policies that lead to the tragedy experienced by Indigenous people, Indigenous women, and Indigenous children every day. Annette deserves accountability for what happened to her. The owner of Freshco, himself a Métis man, said he was shocked and horrified by what he saw. And he had terminated the contract of employment of the security guard. He said he's the father of 2 daughters. This should have never happened. It should not have happened. And everything that can be done should be done to prevent something like this from happening in the future. So we call on the Saskatoon Police Service to investigate and address Annette's complaint against the security guard. and to bring charges if necessary for accosting her. We simply will not address the epidemic of violence and inhumane treatment experienced by Indigenous people in this country, in this province, in this city, until we make people accountable and make sure that going forward, people will know that they will be held accountable. With that, I want to state again that it is an honor to meet Annette. She's brave, she's thoughtful, she's a mother, she's a partner, and she's a proud individual that I'm incredibly proud to support. Thank you.
I'm not speaking.
I'll just add that, again, Annette is still recovering. This was a traumatic experience. So it's not surprising and it's forgivable that she's not able to speak at this time. I respect that, and I hope you do as well. Thank you.
Good morning. I greet you all in the name of Jesus, our great Spirit, our God. My name is Vice Chief Chris Job, Prince Albert Grand Council. And as I can say, Annette, we come from the same nation, Peter Bantan Nation. So she's like a sister to me when it comes down to our nationhood with 11,000 people. You know, today is a sad day. The day that this happened, this is uncalled for. This day and age in 2021, we're still living those times, how our ancestors have lived. Racial discrimination. When you watch that video, it traumatizes you. When my wife was watching that video, she started tearing up. Is this for real? We lost in touch within our inner human being. Imagine all the people that shared that video. Imagine how many people are hurt and crying. When is it going to stop? Is it ever going to stop? One thing I always say to our people, no matter what color you come from, what culture, what values you have, what principles you have, it shows how you're raised in the family. It shows in your heart. The Great Spirit, the Creator, when we pray on our knees and ask the Creator to help us, to guide us. But if our hearts are not clean, if we don't have forgiveness in our hearts, those prayers are not going to go far. Yes. How can we move forward? By being human, by being courteous to each other, because we breathe the same air. We live in the same turtle island. We cross borders. We're supposed to be here together. We are the stewards of the land, of humanity. Annette's going to be scarred for the rest of her life. She's a mother herself. And her partner. You know, it's a ripple effect of a lot of things. And imagine if those recordings weren't there. Just imagine nobody would record that. And imagine all the other incidents that happened across our country that weren't recorded. Stone child that was frozen, that wasn't recorded. All the missing and murdered women and men, those weren't recorded. The world we live in today, it's not going to get better. We know it's not going to get better because we need to get clean ourselves as individuals. The most simple thing you can do for your people, even total strangers, open the door for them when you're coming through the store or some other door. We start encouraging each other. You know, those are really disturbing clips that we saw. I myself only watched it once. That was enough. And right now, a court case is happening. Our neighbors on the south about Mr. Floyd. We need to be civil with things, not start pointing fingers and accusing. Our sister's going to live with this. She's going to tell her children to watch out, because every time you walk out of that house of your own home, even your own home, you don't feel safe at times. When are you going to start feeling safe? We're all in this together. Let's kill racism somehow. Let's destroy racism somehow. If it starts with you, that's lots. You know, we're blessed every morning when we get up. Some people are not with good health. People are incarcerated. They have no freedom. People are in hospital. They're sick. They're imprisoned within their own health system. So we're blessed here today to come and tell Annette's story. And these stories need to be told, because every one of us have a story to tell. You know, I got a call last night to come and show up. You know, of course I was going to come, because I was on my way north already, but, you know, I turned around. So with these words, I just want to encourage you guys, you know, keep moving forward. You know, this is a tragic event that happened to our sister. Imagine other sisters and brothers that are out there that go through this every day. And our systems need to be accountable. Everybody has to come on the same page, or we're going to continue coming to these press conferences. And these press conferences, we're just trying to share the word, what we can do together as a nation. We are trying times right now. As you can see, 3 million people have passed on. 3 million people. But our sister doesn't deserve this treatment, this day and age. God bless you all, your home fires, bless your families. Minigiton, you go say.
Good afternoon. Can you see me? It's a hard day today. I acknowledge the Creator this morning. Thank you for being here, Annette and Justice. I admire your bravery, to the legal counsel and everyone in the room. Once again, we stand here and talk about an extremely disturbing event, something that happened that was horrible. It was unacceptable. And the moment I viewed the video, the first thing that entered my mind was, you know, just the heartache for you, Annette, and what you've been through, the excessive force that was used. Now, this is not an isolated incident. This is an incident that occurs more often than not when it comes to Indigenous women and girls. The mistreatment, the abuse, the attacks, the racism, the marginalization. We can go on and on. We had 231 calls to action. The inquiry for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And this is a clear example of what needs to be addressed. The mistreatment of our women and girls still continues after the painful, uh, pardon me, it was painful to listen to the stories of missing and murdered. And this has to do with violence against women. In this country, in this province, in this region, we need to stand together and say enough is enough. I am tired of listening to the complaints each and every day, but seeing it is the reality that it's happening, and even to a further degree than what we could even imagine. We have over 60% women sitting on remand in Pine Grove. And I ask the question, how many have gone through what Annette has gone through? Muscled over and, it just, to be treated so, inhumanely. You have laws to protect animals that don't get treated like that in this country. So I put it out there to the province. I know Vice Chief is going to talk about this too, what needs to be done. We need to have better effort for training. And we talk about cultural sensitivity, and I still say it, and I'll say it again. How can you train an attitude? Clearly, when you see the disdain, just the other day, I faced racism. The next day after this incident, I faced racism twice in one day. And let's keep in mind how this only exaggerates a lot of the racism that still continues on. So we need to start looking at taking up the Hate Crime Act, picking that up and enforcing that, and calling out racism when we see it, calling out racism when we feel it as Indigenous people. I know sometimes it's hard to prove. How do you prove an attitude? But there are ways. We have cameras today. I want to say thank you to the person who recorded this terrible incident. It must have been very traumatizing for her too. And the other thing that was noticed on that video are how many people stood back and didn't come in to help. I mean, I just, probably for fear of reprisal. If you're First Nation, you'll get thrown in jail. And for what? For doing the right thing. But Annette, again, you don't deserve to be treated like that. No one deserves to be treated like that. That was excessive force. And may us coming together provide you with some comfort and support, and you give voice to many others who were not videotaped or video recorded on a day like that. So with that, thank you, and I'll save some words for Vice Chief Pratt. My name is Vice Chief Heather Bear, HEATHERBEAR. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And first of all, I want to acknowledge the Creator, Vice Chief Job, for saying the prayer with us this morning. Acknowledge my colleague, Vice Chief Bear, our staff that are here with us today, Larissa, Jay, and the others, Annette, and you and your family. It's something that's very, very traumatic for all of us to witness. And I just want to tell you that our hearts and our thoughts and prayers are with you. It's a very traumatic incident for all of us. And everyone saw the video. And for us at the FSIN, we get these phone calls daily. Dawn can attest, like every day there's phone calls, some type of discriminatory practice within Saskatchewan in every sector. It's not just, it's in health, it's in child welfare, it's in justice, it's in education. The list goes on and on. And this province has a real problem that needs to be seriously addressed. And we can no longer afford to ignore the 1,000-pound gorilla that's sitting in the corner over there. Saskatchewan has a racism problem. And whether or not people want to acknowledge that, whether they're in government or whether they're in wherever they're sitting within the society, it has to be addressed and it has to be there. And for myself, these incidents happen far too often. Chief Cameron made some comments there expressing the frustration of First Nations people. Like, when is it going to end? When are the injustices against First Nations people going to stop within this region? We look at what happened 3 years ago with the Boucher case. There's another incident right now happening today with the George Floyd's family right now that is dealing with in the United States, another incident of racism that's taking place. And whether or not the jury rules in that favor is going to determine whether or not that country explodes again with more violence. And that's exactly what's going to happen if the jury doesn't do what's right and give that family some type of closure and justice. So lots of frustration, lots of things that need to happen. I think this provincial government as well as the federal government need to develop some type of anti-racism strategy. I think it takes a lot more, like Vice Chief Bear talked about. We can try to cultural response and attitude, but that's impossible. I think we need mandatory Indigenous studies classes across the board. People need to know the true history of what's happened to our people, of where we are today, or otherwise these acts of violence are going to continue. And I'm going to say it plain today, plain and simple, is that if she was a white woman, would that have happened? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves, because I guarantee you that wouldn't have taken place. But because she's an Indigenous woman, but because we've been dehumanized within the justice system and within all sectors. I mean, how many more incidents are like this going to happen within the healthcare system? How many more people are going to get burned? How many more people are going to get beaten up? How many people are going to be left on the side of the road? How many more children are going to be killed within the social services system? And it's Canada's policies and it's Saskatchewan's policies, institutions and legislations that are literally killing and choking the life out of Indigenous people, and it has to stop. It has to stop. It's our population's growing. We're going to be 30-40%, or half the population of this province by the middle of this century. So we got to start addressing those problems now, and it's up to everybody to show courage, no matter where they are, whether they're in provincial government, whether they're in municipal government, whether they're in First Nations government, or whether they're in federal government. They have to show the courage to do what's right. We're fully supporting this family with what they're facing and what they're going through, and we're calling upon those systemic changes, even within the training for the guards that are happening. There needs to be more cultural sensitivity training across the board for frontline workers that are dealing with Indigenous people on a daily basis in every sector. And that's what we're pushing for and advocating for today. Vice Chief Bear talked about the MMIW inquiry. Secular violence continues to take place against our women at a disproportionate number. How many more women have to go missing? How many more women have to be beaten up and left on the side of the road? And thank goodness that somebody was there to record this, because this would have been another incident swept under the rug and forgotten about just as quick as it happened. But we're thankful for the lady that recorded, but we're also thankful for Annette having the courage. And we know it's a very traumatic experience for you and your family, but we want to assure you, Chief Cameron said to assure you that you have the full support of FSIN, you have the full support of the Federation, and we will assist you any way that we can and continue to provide any support that's required to see that somebody somewhere is held accountable for this. And that's what we're pushing for. We're not wanting this to get swept under the rug. We want it to be seriously addressed. We want these incidents to happen. Somebody needs to be made an example of, so it stops. So that tomorrow or next week, when there's another situation that's going to rise, that person will think twice before they do something to one of our people, because it happens far too often. It needs to end. And that's what we're pushing for at the executive. And I want to thank the good work to Vice Chief Bear and on the MMIW inquiry. I want to thank her for all the hard work that she's doing, because it's a passion of hers. Investments made by the federal government are going to go a long way to address this issue. But with that, I want to thank all of you for listening, being here with us today, and let's continue to push for the changes. Let's show the political courage, and that's what we're calling upon the political leaders here in Saskatchewan. Show the political courage to do what's right. Let's draft some type of an anti-racism strategy. Let's work together, and let's stop this abuse, and let's stop further violence against our people, because enough is enough. And First Nations people are literally at the breaking point, and it has to end. So with that, thank you very much. Appreciate you all being here today.
Is there any questions? Yeah.
Well, two questions. First, Is it okay to speak to the nature of the kind of injuries that Annette had suffered?
The question was, is it appropriate to speak to the nature of the injuries that Annette suffered? I'm going to answer it simply. The nature of the injuries are ongoing. And I won't speak to the full extent of them, but I want to make it clear that this was a traumatic experience for Annette. And that trauma will impact her for the rest of her life. And that's a significant injury she suffered.
Question is regarding the response of both the store owner and of Fresh Produce Corporate. Was the response of both the store owner and the Fresh Produce Corporation, were those enough?
I think the question was the response of the Freshco owner and Freshco corporate enough? Is that correct? I think with respect to this incident, it does demonstrate that businesses are prepared to hold people accountable for wrongful behavior. And I think that's appropriate in this circumstance. With respect to whether or not they will screen loss prevention or security officers in a different way, whether or not they will provide better policies for those individuals and organizations to follow, I think is a question that still needs to be answered in a more fulsome way.
You want to just take the mic so we can hear you? Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Mandy CTV. Earlier you mentioned that you were calling on the Saskatoon Police Service to investigate and address the complaint. I was also wondering if that same action could be asked towards the security company itself, as I know Freshco has like split ties with security companies, so I'm looking for action from the police.
The question was, if I'm correct, we're looking for action on behalf of the Saskatchewan Police Service with respect to the conduct. Pardon?
Saskatoon Police Service.
Saskatoon Police Service. Thank you, Marissa. To hold the individual accountable that was involved and whether or not we would be seeking action against the corporation, correct?
Yes, just because the security company does have appointed by the store, so like they hired them, but it's still a separate company, so from them and not just like the police.
At this time, we continue to learn new information about the event. And we continue to understand better and better what happened. At this time, what we really do have is clear evidence of what happened to Annette in the parking lot, how it persisted, and the nature of it. So at this time, we are calling on the Saskatoon Police Service to take action against that specific individual, to lay criminal charges if necessary, but to seriously investigate Annette's complaint against the security guard. And that's full stop where it is at this point.
Okay, we'll have time for one more. Go ahead.
Ceci, are you representing Annette in her charges as defense counsel?
The question was, am I representing Annette as defense counsel? At this time, I am representing Annette on behalf of the FSIN. Annette is entitled to retain any legal counsel she wants for any circumstances that she might be involved in, legally speaking, but at this time, I don't believe it's appropriate to comment further on that.
Thank you. Also, yeah.
Vice Chief Pratt, I know the Saskatoon Tribal Council has set up a defense lawyer, Brian Beckley, on Annette's behalf and was asking her to get that. I'm not sure whether the FSIN has been in touch with the STC or Annette has been in touch with STC about, I guess, steps going forward on her defense.
We discussed that with Cyan.
Vice Chief Bear will
Yeah.
provide an answer.
Yes, thank you. Good question. No, at this time, the FSIN has made that commitment, Chief Bobby Cameron, and taking care of the legal expenses associated with this terrible incident. Absolutely, without question, is the answer.
Thank you very much. Then we're gonna just take the. Ms. Chief, if you can, yeah, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead. Just, you want to speak to me? Okay, no, she's not close. All right, thank you guys for coming. We'll end it there. And we'll response to